Yes, us. Welcome to the Kefi Life Podcast. My name is Kiki Vale, and I'll be your guide to creating a life of olakala, all is well. Together, we'll get back to the basics, and we'll explore fresh new ways to flourish in mind, body, and soul the Greek way. You can look forward to interviews, stories, essential self-care strategies, recipes, and actionable takeaway olakala moments. This is going to be so much fun. Let's get going. Πάμε! Our Lexi for today is Elaiólado. Elaiólado, or olive oil. My very favorite thing about the Mediterranean diet is the main component in the food plan, which is Elaiólado, or olive oil. There are just not enough words, sentiments, or historical tidbits to express the human value and benefits of Elaiólado, or olive oil. The art of using olive oil for mind, body, and spirit goes back 6,000 years. The father of medicine, Hippocrates, used olive oil in over 60 healing remedies. Elaiólado, fall in love with it for all the best reasons. Elaiólado, olive oil, has been celebrated in the civilized world for millennia, nearly eternal. The oil of this fruit has been more than just food to the cultures of the Mediterranean region. It's been medicinal, ceremonial, sacramental, and the foundation of great wealth and power. It is safe to say that olive oil is the ethos, the essence of Greek culinary culture. Today, the priceless and life-giving ingredients of this liquid gold can be delivered to you when you purchase your premium bottle of Kefi Life extra virgin olive oil from the region my parents were born, the Peloponnese. The coveted Koroneiki olive is extensively cultivated here in the southern part of Greece, which offers the unique microclimate needed to grow a fruit netting the utmost nutrient value for extra virgin olive oil. Kefi Life Extra Virgin Olive Oil, a boundless amount of value, high in antioxidants with anti-inflammatory properties, linked to good mood and improved mental health. Get your bottle of wellness today when you visit kefilife.shop. Just like wine, there are hundreds of olive varieties, each with its own unique taste and character. High-quality extra virgin olive oils are fruity, they're pleasantly bitter, and that's due to the freshness of the olives and the pungent taste because, well, the abundance of nutrients. Today, I'm so excited about this. We're going to dive into the beauty, the wellness, the history, and the health of extra virgin olive oil for the sake of your vitality and mine. My lovely guest, a certifiably and vastly knowledgeable olive oil expert and enthusiast, Joanne Lacina.
Yes.
She's the president of Olive Oil Lovers, and I welcome you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Kiki. I'm very excited to talk about olive oil today.
Oh my God. Well, you're an expert in it. So before we get into that, you did something that I've always dreamed of doing, which is going to Greece and staying for a very long time. How did you end up? Was it Crete that you ended up in?
Yes, I lived in Hania, Crete, in Western Crete for 2 years and go back regularly.
And then when you went that first time, did you go for work-related experience or was it just, tell us about the experience?
Yeah, it was kind of one of those post-university, just kind of want to travel the world a bit before I kind of sit down and get a regular job. And so I went to Crete to get an English, to teach English as a foreign language, basically. But, that only happened for a couple of months before I just ended up really becoming very curious about olive oil from all the fantastic food that I was eating and seeing the way that the Greeks were eating it. And then, of course, being surrounded by olive trees, which I had never seen before. And I really just fell in love with the magic of that and really wanted to learn more and just kind of, segued away from teaching and immediately just kind of fell into learning as much as I could about olive oil. In the birthplace of olive oil.
I think I read somewhere that there's an olive oil tree in Crete that may be 6,000 years old. Is that true?
This is true. Yeah. It's definitely thousands of years old. It's debatable, perhaps, for 3,000 to 6,000, I've heard. And I have actually crawled inside of the trunk of this tree. It's kind of hollowed out inside and all knotted like a big circle, and kind of you can even crawl in there. It's really neat, and it still produces olives today. Yes, this is true.
How did you feel when you were in the tree that is thousands of years old, that produces a food that is so good for us, that has been around forever and still continues to give us health and vitality? You must have felt something extra special.
You do. It's really mind-boggling to think that there is a tree out there that can survive for thousands of years and think that it was producing a consumable food for civilizations way before your time and is still feeding people today. And every time I see trees like this, I just think, what have these trees seen in their days? What do they know? It's really magical. The olive tree is a very, very magical tree for sure.
I think I'll have to put it on my bucket list. Well, as the president of Olive Oil Lovers, let's now kind of segue into how you started to take your interest of olive oil into a business of it and to learning about it, the education of it.
So, I was first kind of dumbstruck, if you will, by how much the Greeks were eating and how tasty it was. Because I had just kind of, I grew up in the 90s in my, adolescent years where we were told that fat will make you fat and, use it in very limited amounts. And so I went to Greece and kind of still had this mentality like, okay, we kind of learned that it's good for you, but still just only, don't eat too much of it. And I go to Greece and they're just pouring bucket loads of oil, like pouring it all over their food. They want their Greek salads to be floating in 2 inches of olive oil so that they can dip their bread in the bottom, and I was like, no, don't pour so much. No, that's too much. It's too much. And, and after a couple of weeks, I just let go of that. I was like, all right, I'm going to do what the Greeks do. And I'm just going to eat all this olive oil and soak it up. It's so delicious. And, after 2 years of living there, I actually dropped 30 pounds. So just doing nothing but eating the local food and swimming and whatever. And so I knew, okay, this stuff does not make you fat. I think it even helps you lose weight. I don't know why. I mean, now I understand more why, but back then I just knew it was a very magical food that I think we in America maybe have gotten a little bit wrong. And also, and it just, it tasted like nothing I had grown up with, that we would go through a bottle a year in our household. And, growing up, it was just something like, oh, you kind of cook with it here and there because it's healthier, but, really didn't see it as an ingredient that lends flavor to food, that you want to really taste. And so that was new to me as well. And then I just started traveling more and going to actually getting into the trade show circuit where I got introduced to other producers from other parts of the world and just started learning there was this whole world out there of olive oils from different regions, from different varieties of olives and how they produce different flavor characteristics, and then how the harvesting and production methods contribute to the resulting flavors that you extract from those. It was just so complex, so fascinating. And I was like, oh man, I have to bring this back to the US because this is excellent knowledge that I think a lot of people don't realize. And I want to do what I can here. So that's.
And that you've done, and something you said that was really interesting, which is true about the Mediterranean Greek diet, which is it's mostly like a light protein fish and vegetable and olive oil and some bread diet. And the olive oil really does add the flavor. So you don't need a lot of extra things in your meal. Let's talk about, for the folks that are not familiar with olive oil, like you weren't back then. And I grew up with olive oil. I could bathe in olive oil. I drink olive oil. I eat it with everything. I put it on my skin. I love it. Let's talk about how it's made for the folks that are not that familiar. How is it? Because it's a commodity.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that I always, if there's one point that people could take, to really understand about olive oil is that olive oil is literally a fruit juice. It's a fruit juice. So, you want to think of it more that way than in a cooking oil, because the way that it is made, it's the olive is a fruit of the olive tree that is pitted. And to make olive oil, you pick the olives off of the tree when they're the perfect form of ripeness. And in the Northern Hemisphere, this happens generally in the months from, late October into December. This is when the highest quality olives are harvested and at their optimal ripeness. And you pick this fruit off the tree. And just like any fruit, it will oxidize over time. It will oxidize it will bruise if you knock it around too much. It's susceptible to, fruit flies and things just like any fruit. So, it's crucial to get that picked fruit straight to to the mill, which there's always, a mill nearby that a farmer will take the fruit to within, hours of picking. And then you immediately wash the olives, or you get off any of the dirt and leaves. Then you put the olives kind of go into a crusher where they're crushed. And then this kind of mulch that you have is put in what's called a malaxer for about 30 to 40 minutes generally. I mean, as low as 20 minutes or 30 minutes. The longer you malax, the more oil you will get. But maybe, it'll get too warm. And anyway, I don't need to go into too many details on that. But essentially what that does is it forms olive droplets, that malaxing process. And then this is how modern oil is extracted. It's, where a lot of people use the term pressed. That's no longer done today. That's an old school way of making olive oil. Today, the highest quality olive oil, you take this malaxed mulch, if you will, and you put it in and it goes into a centrifuge where it's then spun to separate the liquids from the solids. And then you kind of have this, then what you're left with is the olive oil, which is then, decanted and filtered to get a really clean, to get any extra substances out or particles out of the oil. And then you have like a really clean oil. And it's really juice. There's no heat used in the process. There's no other chemicals. There's nothing. You're quite literally just crushing this olive fruit and extracting the oil from it and putting that into a bottle in the simplest terms. And some really, really, the highest serious quality producers, this whole process from picking the olive to having an oil you can literally dip your bread in right there in the mill and eat, can be as little as 3 to 4 hours. So really this all happens within the same day. You can't necessarily, you want to filter and the oil typically before bottling. So there is some time there, but you can eat you can eat it. I've done it many times, been in a mill and the oil's coming out of the spout and you stick a cup under there and you're like, yay, and it's the freshest oil you'll ever have. It's quite amazing. So it's, it's a fruit juice. And that's what makes it so unique.
As you say, it's so magical because of, it comes from the earth and you can eat it within hours. When I was in Greece, I had the experience to witness the oil swishing around in a big, huge, large vat. And then there were chemists that were testing the levels of the freshness. And because there's so many olives that come in. Let's talk a little. This is such an extraordinary process. And then to see the trees and to see how it's processed, the olives are processed. Let's talk about different types of olive oils, which have to do with different types of olives. In my case, with Kefi Life Extra Virgin Olive Oil, we have the olive oil that's from the Kalamata region, the Peloponnese, where my family is from. The Kalamata olive, the Koroneiki olive, describe its significance and beauty.
So Coronaiki olive oil, which is oil produced from the Koroneiki olive, it's a very prevalent variety in Greece. About 80% of the cultivars, as we call them, the varieties of olive in Greece, are of the Koroneiki variety. It loves the Greek land, the Greek soil, the Greek sun. It thrives in that region. Olives are very kind of tied to their indigenous regions. So, you really tend to not find these varieties outside of their native regions. Now, there is some Coronaiki. It does take well to the California region. We do know that. But, Greece is where it loves. Greece is where its home is. So Greek Coronaiki olive oil is really, really a special, very unique product. And it's weird. It's a small olive that looks a little like a pistachio. I always say it's like the size of a pistachio. But if you see a tree, it's a very distinct variety. You can't miss it when you see it. When the tree is really healthy, it'll just be loaded in these little pistachio-looking olives that are just, hanging heavy on the trees. And the Coronaiki variety actually has a really high yield, so you can get a lot of oil out of this tiny olive, which is quite remarkable. And it's also, it's less prone to diseases and that kind of a thing. So you get really good quality oil from Coronaiki. And the whole kind of all the bulk buyers of olive oil in the world know that Koroneiki in Greece is really the best variety, if you will, because it's a good value, and about over 80% of the oil that's produced in Greece is of extra virgin quality, whereas compared to other areas like Spain and whatnot, while they produce very good quality oils overall, maybe 30% of the whole production of that country would be considered extra virgin. So this is very unique to Greece. I very often say to people, like, if they don't know where to buy from Greece, because chances are it's authentic. They don't buy oil from other regions and mix with theirs, because theirs they don't have to. People come to Greece to buy their oil to bring to their countries to mix with their oil. So you really kind of know what you're getting, if you will, when you buy an oil from Greece. So that's one thing. It's an oil you can always really trust you're going to get good quality. And two, the flavor profile is very unique of this oil. And I mean, I've been doing olive oil tastings for 15 years, and I can tell you that the Coronaiki variety is probably has the most broad appeal to the most palates, because it's kind of a little bit sweet. It can be a little bit almondy. You're going to get a little bit of that, those grassy artichoke, maybe even a little bit of green apple aromas sometimes. But it's never going to be too bitter that it kind of overwhelms your palate, or, it's going to have a little bit of that spicy, pungent kick in the back of your throat, a little bit of, nice tingly bitterness, but a lot of, nice, good, smooth, fruity flavors that you can really use with anything and everything. I mean, you can cook with it. The Greeks bake with it. They make desserts with it. They roast with, meats and vegetables with it. But not only that, you dress with it. So, you grill a nice fish and then you just pour olive oil on it, and it's just, it's like it lends such a beautiful flavor to the fish, or you pour it over a Greek salad, you pour it over fresh garden tomatoes, literally kind of anything. And it's never really going to fight the flavors of the food. It's just going to complement them and enhance the flavors of the food. And really only Coronaiki, truly, in my opinion, is a variety that can do it all. And so it's loved by chefs. It's loved by consumers for this reason. It's kind of like what I call like a powerhouse olive oil.
We appreciate that beautiful testimonial, which was all truth known by you and experienced by you about the Kefi Life Extra Virgin Olive Oil, because it does come from the Kalamata region. And that really, in a nutshell, you beautifully describe the value of extra virgin olive oil. Sometimes it can be a little bit pricier, and that's the reason you just described it. You also mentioned disease, and disease is so prevalent in America. I'm a firm believer that disease, in many cases, is the dis-ease of what's going on in your life. So if we believe that, and we can go to nutrition and movement and spirituality and relationships and sort of what Dan Buettner talks about in the Blue Zones, then food and olive oil has a lot to do with this. One ingredient, I don't know if I can call it an ingredient, but something called polyphenols is found in olive oil. How can we spotlight that? Because it's really important to understand polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil.
Yes. So I think for a good 20 plus years, we knew olive oil was healthy because of, the fatty acid profile, the healthy monounsaturated fats. And it's only within maybe the last decade that these polyphenols have gotten attention. And this is really what makes olive oil stand apart from any other so-called cooking oil. There are basically antioxidant compounds that are found in olive oil, and there's about more than 35 that have been found to date, and many of them have been studied scientifically in health studies, kind of singularly. There's like hydroxycortisol or larapen, oleocanthal is one that's been studied quite a bit. So basically they have antioxidant properties. lessen the oxidative stress on the body, which then lowers your risk for heart disease, diabetes. I mean, it's very recently was found to have quite some phenomenal effects against cancer developing in the body, and is very healthy for the brain, and can lessen the risk of Alzheimer's. So these polyphenols have really, really quite magical health properties, and the higher quality, this is very important. The higher quality the oil, meaning you picked the olives when they were still green or just beginning to ripen. When they're at their highest, as an olive begins to ripen and turn from purple to black, let's say, these antioxidant benefits really drop quite dramatically. So it's very important to harvest the olives, to pick them off the tree, before they ripen, get too ripe, so that you can really take advantage of these properties. And how you know that your oil is kind of high with these phenols is it comes through in the bitterness and pungency of the oil. So when you taste an oil, it's a little bit bitter, that has some bitterness, that maybe makes you cough in the back of your throat. You're going to feel a little tingle in your back of your throat. That is a sign of a healthy olive oil. And that's very important to note. Some people might say, people who are not used to that might think there's something wrong with the oil because they've just never had a really, really healthy, sound olive oil before. That's actually what one tastes like. So that's a good sign. You're really getting, you're taking a few years off your life if your olive oil makes you cough a little bit, I always say. I was like, congratulations. You just added a couple of years to your life right there.
How fabulous. How fabulous. I love a little example of how we should taste olive oil and how we know that it is really healthy for us. What's the best way to store the olive oil?
Storage is very important when it comes to olive oil. Because again, this ties back to what I said earlier about it being a fresh fruit juice. So, you wouldn't keep your orange juice in the fridge for 6 months. You know that you want to consume it sooner than later. And olive oil is the same way. Now, of course, it has a longer shelf life than orange juice. An olive oil stored properly can actually maintain its kind of, its flavors and healthy compounds even longer than the suggested, best before date, which is kind of two years from harvest, we say. And that's if it's stored properly from production to consumption. That's very important. So you really want to avoid light and heat when it comes to storing your oil. It's very, very important. This is why you always see olive oil in dark glass bottles or opaque containers, because you just really don't want your oil to be exposed to light. It will photo-oxidize, and we don't want our fresh fruit juice to oxidize. Then all those health benefits kind of drop if we're doing that. So, this is kind of why it's great to buy oil where it's being stored the proper way before you buy it. If it's sitting on the top shelf in a supermarket under those harsh supermarket lights for weeks on end, you might want to consider that. And so once you get it home, you also really want to treat it with care and make sure you're looking after it and not letting it oxidize. So, a lot of people, a lot of times they come in pretty bottles and you want to put that on your kitchen counter, next to your stove and look at it every day. But, we don't suggest that. It's best to keep it, in a dark cupboard away from any light and heat sources. I have, know a lot of people who keep it in their wine cellar, and that's a perfect place. It's cool, it's dry, it's dark. Store your unopened bottles in the wine cellar until you open them, and then make sure that you're storing it, away from the stove in a dark cupboard. And then, an unopened container of oil stored very properly, like in your wine cellar, let's say, which is, I think, is one of the best places in your home to just, a cool, a basement room somewhere away from the dark. You'll be surprised. You can open a bottle 2 years later. I've done this many times. We always store our oil very, very well. it'll still have its bitterness and pungency and fruity aromas even after 2 years. So, it's very important, if you're not going to open it right away, to store it properly, and it will stay quite fresh for a long time. And then once you open it, I always say, try to eat it, within 3 months, because as you're eating it, you're introducing more oxygen into the oil, right? And so it will, the oil that's remaining in the bottle will oxidize quicker over time as you use it. And so again, it's a fruit juice. You want to consume it liberally and quickly after opening. And, don't save it for a special occasion. If you get a nice bottle of Kefi Life, just be like, woo, thank you. And open it right up, pour it on your food right then and there, and just eat it. You don't want to save it for a special occasion, next year or something. No, that's not, our olive oil, we want to just eat right away and enjoy it right away.
Joanne, I just love our conversation. It's been so delightful, but it's also been informative for the folks to understand how this is such a powerhouse. And this liquid gold can help us internally and externally. Unfortunately, this is the end of our interview. However, we will stay in touch. And I always ask my special guest this one question. Joanne, in my life, and you can answer this, you can finish it by answering, Joanne, in my life, I have learned that.
Well, wow. I have learned that you never know where you're going in life. Just in context of this conversation, when I was in college, I thought I was going to be a music video producer. And then I went to Greece thinking I was going to teach English. And then I fell literally into a well of olive oil and became a businesswoman. I mean, who knew? So I guess you never know. Just be open to what life brings you and the doors that open before you, and step across and see what happens. You never know.
We'll see you there.
Great. Thank you.
Stay right there. Up next, your weekly takeaway to keep it all as well. Ola kala.
This Ola kala moment brought to you by the law offices of Liston and Centillus. Ranked number 1 by the leading lawyers network since 2010, taking care of all your real estate needs.
The connection between you, your brain, and your body are imperative. The starting point, of course, is to pay attention to the connection. If there's a breakdown or weakening, whether it be in a relationship, your work, or yourself, I'd say it's smart to evaluate it and correct. A healthy thing to do for Ola kala, all is well in a connection, is to seek solutions to keep your relationships strong and unified. But wait a second. Don't wait until the last minute. Here are a few Ola kala tips to keep the balance and avoid serious meltdowns. Number 1, surround yourself with joy, which can be contagious in a scenario. Number 2, ask for help. Better to do so than wallow in a collapse. And number 3, as always, get a good night's sleep, which positively, directly affects everything that you do in a day. Keeping yourself centered will provide the lens to see what's really going on with your connections.
Kiki Vale is the founder of Kefi Life. She is passionate about whole person wellness and living a fulfilled life. Her Kefi Life podcast is created to simply and naturally help you harmonize the mind, body, and soul the Greek way. Visit KefiLife.com, at KefiLife365 on Instagram, and check out Kiki Vale on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Join us again next time for more positive energy and inspiration on Kefi Life.